Representative Ashley Hinson back on the Newsmaker line. Representative Hinson, welcome back to the program. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Good to be with you.
It's good to be with you. I'm just so annoyed, Representative Hinson, about this.
Annoyed is a calm word for it.
I know you sometimes get more emotional about it, but the thing is, yeah, here we are, continually depending on the niceness of the Taliban, and I don't know how we got into this position, Representative Hinson. What's just your overall take on what's going on with Afghanistan right now?
Well, this wasn't an extraordinary success, as President Biden called it. This was an extraordinary failure of leadership from him and his administration. He flat out lied when he said no American would be left behind, because that's exactly what we're seeing right now. They did not have a plan. You don't leave Americans behind and label it as an extraordinary success. And so when you look at what's happening with the Taliban and the negotiations we're now having to do because they did not execute a well-thought-out plan under the advice of generals who were saying, hey, the Taliban's escalating, the country and the government of Afghanistan is going to fall. It is a security threat. They ignored all of those warning signs and the intelligence, and now Americans are stranded in Afghanistan, as are our allies. And, we continue to see the Afghan women who stood up for freedom and now are facing grave risk. I applaud their bravery in the images we're seeing come out, but we should have never been on the Taliban's timeline to begin with. The only timeline we should have been on was the American timeline, getting our Americans home and our Afghan partners to safety. And now we're seeing the ramifications of failed policy in this situation.
Well, and Representative Hinson, are we eventually going to get around to having some hearings on this? Because, look, people need to be fired. I can sit here as a civilian and talk to you and folks like Senator Grassley, and they start telling me, gosh, we never should have abandoned Bagram Air Base. They start saying things that make perfect sense to me. We never should have abandoned the country until we had gotten everybody out. And I think, okay, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm just a civilian sitting here. I'd like to know, in fact, who was making these decisions and who was accountable for this.
Absolutely. And accountability is the key word there, Jeff, because we do need relentless, aggressive congressional oversight on this issue specifically. And I think it's appalling, and taxpayers in Iowa should be offended that Speaker Pelosi called us as members of the House of Representatives back to Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago to ram through a $3.5 trillion socialist spending plan, but then ignored our congressional oversight duties on the travesty in Afghanistan. I think it's appalling, and we need to be asking those very important questions. How many Americans are still there? How are we going to get them out? Do we have to rely on trusting the Taliban to do that? Because I think that there should be a lot of apprehension over that. How are we going to secure any military assets that have been taken over by the Taliban? Do we even have a full accounting of those? And then obviously with what's coming on Saturday, it's the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I think that's, top of mind for many Iowans and many Americans right now. How are we going to stop a terrorist resurgence? And so those are questions that I want to ask these administration officials, General Milley, as well as Secretary Austin, Secretary Mayorkas, and Secretary Blinken. They have to answer for this, and President Biden and his administration need to be held accountable.
Well, Representative Hinson, you brought up the anniversary of 9/11 coming up this weekend, and I hate to be that guy on the radio, and I'm not normally that guy, but I do feel less safe today than I did before this debacle in Afghanistan. And I know Senator Ernst has been on the air talking about, yes, we should be at an elevated state of awareness of being attacked. Do you feel the same way?
I absolutely do, and we've been sounding the alarm on this specifically because of the situation at our southern border. We have an open border to the south. We know people on the terror watch list have been apprehended coming across. Those are just the ones that we have caught. So I think all Americans need to be on alert. We can't be too cavalier about what's happening on Saturday, because ultimately it is our safety and security at risk. So that's why we've been advocating for months to say, hey, you need to secure the southern border, because this is putting our families and our communities at risk. So I think last month, we're still waiting on August numbers, but we know in July you had more than 200,000 people cross the border illegally. And those are, again, just the ones they caught. So it's an incredible vulnerability. We are weakened on the global stage, not to mention all of the posturing happening by other countries trying to take advantage of the situation in Afghanistan. So The national security implications here are mounting. The global stage and America's strength on that global stage is weakened. And I think we have, again, serious accountability issues here that we need to be aggressive in our congressional oversight in going after this administration for answers.
You're listening to U.S. Representative Ashley Hinson. And Representative Hinson, earlier you brought up that $3.5 trillion budget that got rammed through the House. I know that Democrats are making it clear they're trying to pass it without the support of Republicans like you. What's the update on this? Is there still efforts to try to get this $3.5 trillion bill to the president's desk?
Yes, plain and simple, we should not be spending $3.5 trillion on a socialist spending plan and ignoring all these other issues that we just spent minutes talking about, Jeff. The American people are speaking out about this. I've done 5 in-person town halls in the district in the past few months, 3 teletown halls, and this is an issue that continues to come up. These are priorities that Americans don't want or need right now, and we need to be focused on targeted spending on issues that matter to the American people. The only way that Democrats are going to be able to pay for this extraordinary spending plan, money that we don't have, by the way, is to try to raise revenue by raising taxes. Inflation is soaring. Everyday Iowans are already paying more for everyday life items. So I just say it's impossible to justify this tax and spending spree. It will make life even less affordable for working families. And Iowa taxpayers are sick of being disrespected on this issue. And meanwhile, you have members of the Democrat Progressive Caucus coming out and saying $3.5 trillion should be the floor for this spending. So it's clear that they are proposing policies that take our country in the wrong direction. And I'm not sure what universe they're living in, but they're clearly not out talking to Iowans like I am. And I can tell you this is spending that Iowans don't want.
Well, and that's it, Representative Hinson. I would say if we were to talk about an issue that Iowans talk to me that's affecting their day-to-day life, it's the cost of things. And I think it actually is a point that people should make. Will this $1 trillion bill exacerbate the problem? Will it, in fact, increase how much things cost in Iowa? Representative Hinson, you're saying yes, it will.
Absolutely, it will. And actually, I serve on the House Appropriations and Budget Committee. And so when you look at the Budget Committee and our role for oversight on this spending, our ranking members sent a letter to the Congressional Budget Office asking specific questions about inflation, about how it's all tied to this increase in spending. And I think it's a direct quote from that letter. This inflation has eroded the buying power for American families. We know it's true. And again, you continue to pump more of this taxpayer money that we don't have into this economy. That's exactly what it's going to do. We already have supply chain issues. We have worker shortage issues. And then as you talk about the cost of things, we know life is even less affordable for working families under this Biden administration and under Nancy Pelosi's so-called leadership in Congress. So I'm going to be standing up for taxpayers who are tired of footing the bill for these policies, and the radicals are, as we know, chomping at the bit to ram this through, despite how harmful they know it's going to be to Iowans.
U.S. Representative Ashley Hinson. It's hard to tell where Representative Hinson is on these issues, isn't it? Nope, she's a straight shooter. I always enjoy talking with her on the issues of the day. Representative Hinson, have a great day.